it helps you reach your goals. Just about every goal that I laid out for myself, I've reached, because you're always, once again, planning ahead. When I get out of high school, I'm gonna go to college. Then I get out of college, I'm going to law school. I get out of law school, I'm gonna become a judge. Become a judge, I'm gonna run for the White House, etc. You think like that naturally as a young person. So, you already have your blueprint there, and then you're just making all of the moves and steps to help you reach that goal. So that's the chess mind at work.
Hello, Scouts. I want to welcome you again to another episode of Local Lookout with Bobby and Rodney. Rodney, how you doing today?
Bobby, I am doing great, and I'm also looking forward to this episode of the Local Lookout. And we have a guest that might not be so local, but he definitely have local ties and local connections. And we know you're a very busy guy, so without further ado, Bobby, let me turn it back over to you to get Brother Atkins in here.
Well, this August is Black Business Month. And it's funny you said he doesn't have any local ties. He actually has international ties. I'm going to briefly introduce our special guest today. Someone that's very personal to me. He's another frat brother of mine, but he's also a great friend of mine, going back to our freshman years in college. So without further ado, our special guest today is Mr. Rico Adkins of Chess Yoga. So let's welcome in Mr. Rico Adkins in today.
Hello, guys.
Welcome, brother.
Glad to be on the Black Man's Forum. And like I said, I've been knowing Bobby for years. And so, I definitely couldn't say no, as far as being on the program.
Yeah, I've been excited to have Rico come on. I thought this would be perfect for him to be able to advertise his nonprofit organization. So I'm gonna give y'all a little brief background about Rico and I,
Okay.
Our friendship, how far back it goes to our freshman year, just real quick. So we had both attended orientation together at what was then West Georgia College, and we had actually passed each other coming out and going into the dorm. And this was our orientation group. And we, how we speak to each other. When we walk by a black man, we say, "What's up, man?" We just nodded our head, "What's up?" He happened to come down to the group and didn't realize that we both were in the same dorm room together. It was an overnight stay, and he was like, "Hey, that was your stuff in the room." I was like, "Yeah." He started describing each other's bags and whatnot. And ever since then, a friendship was started right then and there, and that has extended on to us being fraternity brothers. And we have stayed in touch. I told my daughter, I said, "Hey, your freshman roommate is somebody that you're never gonna forget. If you're gonna be friends with them, that's a friendship you can have forever." She's continued that. My wife did the same with her roommate her freshman year in college. They remain close. They stay in touch with each other. So yeah, it's just been natural, man, with Rico and I over the years, and I'm just proud of him to see what he's done with his business. So without any further ado, I'll let him explain what is chess yoga.
All right, chess yoga was really a thought initially, because my interest obviously was chess, and also shared an interest with yoga. And when I was in graduate school at St. Mary's College, after having graduated from University of Georgia, I decided I needed to focus on one or the other. Writing my dissertation, my master's thesis, and what I came up with was I felt like more kids would be interested in chess more so than the yoga aspect of it. With me being in education, I thought that would, spark more of an interest among my students. It's not that I discounted the yoga component, but I placed more of an emphasis on the chess component. And my idea was to make chess more accessible to people who were less affluent. Chess is considered, a rich man's game and that kind of thing. And most African Americans or minority groups in general don't really have access to chess because of the financial requirements, like just to buy the equipment, chessboards, pieces, chess clock, etc., can run you a pretty penny. A chess clock sometimes can run up to $100 per clock. So some people are actually priced out of the activity. And then on top of that, in order to play at a high level, you also have to have resources where you could afford maybe chess lessons and things of that nature. You have to play tournaments, which require entry fees, etc. So all of these things cost money. And so this 501c3 nonprofit organization tries to fill that missing vacuum by providing the resources, chessboards, pieces, chess instruction, chess tournaments that the kids don't have to pay an entry fee in, etc. And so this makes chess much more accessible for those individuals. And not only are we focused in on the localities here, as far as San Pablo, California, where Middle College is located, where I run a chess program there. I also have other organizations that aren't technically nonprofit 501c3, so we act as a financial, fiscal, basically support for those organizations. And so we sponsor them, referred to as fiscal sponsors for several organizations in the Bay Area that provide chess instruction or chess tournaments, where we partner and give away, trophies to the winners of these tournaments, etc. And like I said, the kids don't pay anything. So we focus on areas like Richmond, California, which has a significant minority population. And this is to introduce chess to communities that wouldn't normally have any kind of opportunity to be exposed to chess. And then on the international level, I focus in on areas where I think chess can be used once again to improve overall quality of life. Sometimes in places in Africa, they don't have a lot of activities, to engage in. A lot of kids play soccer, but outside of maybe soccer, there's not much, which kids can be involved in. And as we all know, if you have after-school programs or places to basically create opportunities for kids after school, kids are less likely to be harmed in some kind of way, involved in violence and, activities that might cost their lives. And so we support chess, in these communities, once again, providing chess equipment, instruction, etc. And through the training that I've provided in chess equipment and materials, I've now helped the Oromia region in Shashamane, Ethiopia.
Rico dropped from us for a second. Yeah. Hopefully he will come back on. And but I guess you could, if you want to, I guess we can go ahead on and chime in on what we were able to hear and what he said before before he dropped off. He was having some connection issues in the pre-recording stuff, so it's not too surprising, but hopefully he can get back on. So yeah. But yeah, Bobby, you want to talk about anything that he talked about?
Yeah, absolutely. When he comes back on, I want to ask him what initially started his love for chess. Because when we were roommates, Rico was already, he was playing chess then. I knew he played in high school, and that's why to see him develop that into a nonprofit and to take it overseas, I thought was like I said, I'm proud of him, man. It's outstanding. We've got him back again.
Okay, Rico, look like we got you back. Can you hear us, sir?
Yes, I can hear you.
Can you see us and hear us?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Great.
Yeah,
great. It looks like you're still having a little bit of connection problem, but look, if you go out and you come back on, just pick up where you left off, brother. Yeah, we're gonna get you squared away.
Keep it rolling.
Yeah,
Keep it rolling.
Good. Yeah,
I have a question for you too, but go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Rico.
So like I said, I've helped.
No. Go ahead. Pick up where you left off.
Oh, I've been training kids in Ethiopia, and some of them have been recognized by the Ethiopian government, and they've won medals, silver medalists in the Oromia regional tournaments, and therefore they're able to now qualify to compete for the national chess team in Ethiopia. So that's really the idea, is to really help train kids who have the potential to play on the national men's and women's chess team to represent Ethiopia against the other countries in the chess Olympiads. So that's basically what we're trying to achieve, really. And like I said, there's this huge gap, when we compare chess federations, the U.S. Chess Federation, the Russian Chess Federation.
Okay, Bobby, I think he dropped off on your end too, right?
Yeah, he did.
Okay,
he did. He did.
Yep. All right, so hopefully he'll get all that squared away, because he's got so much to say, and like I said, Bobby, what we're trying to do in this Black Business Month is we're trying to bring to the forefront, and I have nothing against barbershops and restaurants and hair stores or whatever, but people associate that with us, and I think sometimes we associate that with ourselves in our community. But we're trying to really highlight businesses that people don't usually associate with us.
Right.
So hopefully Rico can get his connection fixed, and we can hear the rest of it. But I think he's okay. Okay, yeah. All right, let's see. Okay, Rico, let us know when you can hear us, sir. Okay. Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah, it keeps kind of, it's definitely a connection issue. Yeah. But just keep flowing with it, Rico. We're gonna put it all together for you, brother.
Yeah,
we'll make it work. All right.
Or else I'm gonna interview Amanda instead.
Exactly.
Go ahead, brother.
So, like I said, providing that, chess support to the Ethiopian government encouraged me to then go, larger. And so I actually applied for a grant through USAID. And of course, we all know how that story ended. Trump closed the shop, and so we lost, obviously, the funding on that. But, I haven't given up. I'm actually now focusing on private donors, and private organizations, that aren't, government affiliated, to try to support our chess initiatives, both domestically and internationally. And so that's basically the crux of, what Chess Yoga is mainly about. I can even say overseas, we also worked in Israel for 2 years, 2014, 2015. I was trying to address the Palestinian-Israeli problem. And I partnered with an organization called Giroud Chess based in Jerusalem. And they were tasked with coaching a 5-man Israeli youth chess team while we coached the 5-man Palestinian chess team. I had a student at middle college who's Palestinian. Her uncle, Jamal Subi, is a teacher in Palestine. And so I worked through him to recruit the kids. And then, unfortunately, when we got on the ground to implement, we were going to have the match at the International YMCA, which is basically a skyscraper. It's not like a YMCA here. It has I'm trying to think what it, a restaurant, swimming pool, hotel accommodations. It's a skyscraper. It's not, so therefore it's an international YMCA. It's not like the local 1 to 2 story YMCA that we might be used to here. So it's located in Jerusalem, and that was going to be the site of this match. It's going to be televised. And so once I got on the ground, I go, Jamal, where are the kids? He goes, yeah, they're with me, but he goes, we have an issue. A lot of the parents are asking, will the kids be filmed and recorded? And so I go, yeah, there might be some press, but what's the issue? And he goes, well, the problem is Hamas has basically warned that if these kids participate in this Jewish-related event, there could be some backlash, meaning, some harm could come to those families. So under that political pressure, we had to squash the event, unfortunately. So, we had great ideas, but unfortunately, the two parties are at each other's throats, and it just made it really tough to bring them together, trying to use chess as a medium to bring the two sides together and get more interaction involved with it. So that was obviously a tough one. Go ahead, Bob. You had a question?
That's amazing. Yeah, that's an amazing story that you just told. Now I want to circulate back because when we were roommates, you were already playing chess. I remember that. But tell us what initially gained your interest in playing chess. Who taught you?
What's crazy? My dad had a chess set on the coffee table, and I assumed because he had this chess set that he knew how to play chess. So one day I asked my dad, hey, you want to play chess? And he was like, I actually don't know how to play. It's just there for decorations. And in 3rd grade, I was 8 years old, there was a chess set, game set there. And I grabbed the box, just like any game, Monopoly or what, has a cover. And inside the cover were the instructions on how to play the game. So I actually read those instructions and learned how to play chess. No one technically taught me how to play. But then the problem was, okay, I know how the pieces move, I know the rules and how to play, but I can't find anybody that also knows how to play to actually play a chess game. And so this kid, Sean Webb, who lived right across the street from me, just asked me out of the blue one day, hey, you want to play, you know how to play chess? I was like, yeah. He was like, you want to play a game? I was like, yeah, cool. So that was the first time I played chess, was basically getting ready to go to 8th grade. We played that summer before. And I just fell in love with the game. And so we started playing in our homeroom in 8th grade. It's like a 15, 20-minute session where they call the roll, make some announcements, that kind of stuff, and then you go off to your first period class after that. So during homeroom, we would religiously play chess. It was like a core group of us in that homeroom that would play. It was just one set, and either you would be playing or you would be watching the two people playing. And so basically the chess club at Frederick Douglass High School evolved out of that core as far as like having a group of strong chess players. And so we helped Frederick Douglass High School do something that hasn't been repeated since. We finished third in the state in chess our junior year with no seniors, and second in the state of Georgia in chess our senior year. And I was actually MVP on that junior team, and we only finished a half a point out of the state title. So we were that close. And the team that actually won the state was Benjamin E. Mays. And the guy, African American, that was coaching our team, his friend was coaching Benjamin E. Mays. They were the two strongest African American chess players in the entire city, or at least among the strongest. And so it was no, coincidence that we both finished respectively first and second in the state in 1988. And like I said, it hasn't been repeated since. So that's kind of the roots. And then some of my
does the school still offer chess?
Frederick Douglass, that I don't know.
Oh,
Because
wow.
when Mr.
Okay.
Trendale was, unfortunately, when Mr. Trendale retired from teaching at Douglass, and he was the sponsor, he was the person that held his classroom for chess club and all that. When he retired, unfortunately, he stole the chess trophies out of the trophy case. All of those, the state trophies for our junior and senior year, he took them because in his mind, that was his chess program. But that's unfortunate because we can't go back to the school and look at those chess trophies in the trophy case anymore. So I'm in the process of trying to figure out through the teacher, support systems, basically his retirement system, to see kind of if we can track down Trendale, and get those trophies from him.
That's interesting. I went to your website and I noticed that something that you said on there really stuck out with me. And I'm gonna repeat what you have on your site already. It says, "It is our belief that infusing universal yogic philosophy in public school curriculum will prevent discrimination, violence, and juvenile behavior, and foster tolerance. Therefore, chess yoga provides research in yogic philosophy and the history of religions to create a more harmonious community through prompting the concept of, quote, oneness. Yoga is not a religion, but a universal philosophy and practice that can be found to support every world religion, thus promoting world peace. With so much violence in our public schools and the community, we must look for ways to engender a sense of love and respect for life by raising consciousness through music, curricula, sports, and other after-school programs." That's something that is very much needed in our public schools today. And it's that sense of unity and oneness. And as Rodney mentioned, we don't normally think about chess as something amongst, a quote unquote predominantly black school, or something that we do. I learned how to play chess from my father. My dad taught me how to play when I was in middle school. And I don't play very often, hardly at all. I do have a chess board. I played with my youngest son, beat him pretty bad. We haven't played since, but he was just learning. He was just learning. He was a little too aggressive with his moves. But I only bring that up simply because I think what you're doing is wonderful. It's great. Again, I'm proud of you to see that you would take something that, as you mentioned before, you just picked up, just wanting to learn on your own, developed it into something that you did at your high school. Those kind of accomplishments that you accomplished there with the school and the state, and then to carry it on as a nonprofit organization. I think many of us don't realize that the skills that we have, we can utilize it for something good, as you're doing right here. And you didn't just think about domestically; you took it international. So why did you choose, for example, Ethiopia? What other African countries are you targeting? Or what other nations are you targeting, if it's not on the continent of Africa, to introduce chess yoga?
First, I actually want to piggyback on one of the areas that's stressed on the website. There is a connection between chess and yoga. Chess actually helps you in yoga. Yoga actually helps you in chess. So here's an example of that. Let's say if you lose a chess game, you get upset. You start beating yourself up, you get angry or whatever, right? So in order to control that kind of behavior, you have to detach yourself from the outcome of the game. In other words, you just focus on, are you playing a better game of chess now than you did maybe yesterday or the last game? So, in other words, you just want to focus on the positives. You don't want to really focus on the negatives, because then that might act as a deterrent, or, like I said, it takes you out of balance emotionally. So, the yogic philosophy actually helps you handle chess losses, so you keep it in perspective and you say, oh, okay, I'm using this as a learning opportunity, rather than saying, dang, I lost and I don't want to play no more, or whatever, and giving up chess or something. And then in yoga, it's all about meditation yoga and helping you concentrate and stay focused. And so chess actually is one of those things that can aid in that focusing process, because when you're playing chess, you're not thinking about all this other stuff. You're actually focused. So if you do have problems going on in your life, playing chess will give you a break from that kind of constantly thinking about, dang, that happened or this happened or whatever. You just focus on, dang, what move do I want to make next, etc. It takes your mind off of those problems that you might be having. So it gives you a break away from that. So like I said, they both kind of help. And then really talk about, what really drove me to use chess as a medium. Chess, just like you said, sports, soccer, all of these things can be used to bring people together. I mean, we both went to UGA, where football is big. So you might have a dude that's absolutely firmly in the KKK sitting right next to an African American, and they both high fiving everybody. You know why? Because they're part of the Dog Nation, and in the Dog Nation, you know, football, UGA football is king. It can cut through all of those divisions, whether that be racism, etc. And all of a sudden, you embrace a guy that normally you wouldn't embrace, because he's a part of the dog family. So it can knock down those barriers as well.
Right. Excellent example. Right. I don't want to, I want to make sure you get your questions in.
No, absolutely. I'm just enjoying the conversation, man, and especially the part where we're talking about how this chess yoga helps with our youth and reducing some of the issues that come the way of our youth, wisdom and all that kind of stuff. And so
I was going to
really like for you, Rico, to talk about that, about how it positively affects the youth.
Yep. What it does mainly is it helps young people consider consequences, because when you're playing a chess game, you make a decision to take a pawn or take a piece or whatever. That leads to a certain consequence. In life, when you make a decision, that too can lead to a particular consequence, whether that be positive or negative. So it helps you consider what might happen if you make a certain move. Because in chess, you don't just make moves and think later. You think first, then make your move. So when you start applying that same skill of chess to your real life, you start saying, you know what, before I take this girl out on this date, let me find out X, Y, and Z about her, or whatever. You start considering, these certain things that you need to kind of iron out before you make the decision that, yes, I'm taking her out on a date. Before I go with these guys and hang out on the corner, what could possibly happen if I go out with these guys and hang out on the corner? And so, this might be a bad, scenario. So you abstain from, you stay away, so it helps you think ahead and consider consequences. And those things can be absolutely monumental as far as helping you avoid calamity and keeping you on the path of success. Also, the chess mind, the way it works, it helps you reach your goals. Just about every goal that I laid out for myself, I've reached, because you're always, once again, planning ahead. When I get out of high school, I'm going to go to college. And I get out of college, I'm going to law school. I get out of law school, I'm going to become a judge. Become a judge, I'm going to run for the White House, et cetera. You think like that naturally as a young person. So, you already have your blueprint there, and then you're just making all of the moves and steps to help you reach that goal. So you're already thinking years ahead, about what you want to do. So that's the chess mind at work. When you play chess, it's like doing brain weights. Just like if I go to a gym, lift, do curls or whatever, I'm have big muscles. You play chess, it builds your brain up and makes your brain stronger in those capacities. So as a football coach, I also coach football. I've been an offense coordinator. A lot of times it's unfair for me to be the offense coordinator, because I'm a chess guy. I play speed chess in particular, which helps me. So you got, 10 seconds to get a play call in. So the stuff that I can think about in that little 10-second window is tremendous in comparison to the guy who might not play chess. So I'm considering what he's thinking about and what he might think I'm about to call and all that. So I can set you up, because I can use all of that to, call a play. So I might use a certain formation that makes it look like this is a screenplay or whatever, when really all it is fake 90 stretch QB boot. But you get caught up in the eye candy of the formation and the down 4th and 5 from the 5-yard line, 4th and goal from the 5, and you start thinking it's this based on the pre-snap read, when really it's a disguise, and the real play action, you don't even anticipate because you're too worried about these two stacked receivers on the numbers and all of that, the eye candy. And the last thing you're thinking is just going to be a fake 90 stretch QB booting the other way. So that's the chess mind at work. So if you get kids to
man, look, Rico, I want
to,
Bobby, before I turn it back over to you, Rico, I want to definitely thank you for because 65% of our viewers are men, and I think you definitely put it where the ghost can get it by using the sports analogy with that. Because one thing I was going to say is because I know that we as men we're always thinking about how athletics and those kind of things can help our children with other aspects of life, and it can. I think all of us were athletes, in high school, college or whatever. But what I'm hearing and I'm not a biologist by any stretch of the imagination, but what I'm hearing you say about chess in itself is that how parents and we always talk about how young people under 26 years old, the frontal lobe of their brain, where all the analytical thinking is supposed to be happening. Well, not supposed to. The front of the brain is the brain stem from the back of from the spine, and so it's the most it's the last thing to come in. And what you're basically saying is that what you're doing with youth with chess is basically exercising that frontal lobe, and so these young people are making decisions at 19, 20, 21 years old that you normally wouldn't make until you're 29, 30, 31 years old. That's what I'm hearing, Rico.
Yep, that's exactly true. And even if you examine young chess players, when they're in these tournaments, and that you have to understand, a lot of these big tournaments is both adults and young people playing in these tournaments. And the one thing that'll stand out, you'll notice a kid might be like 14 years old, 12 years old, but because he's constantly used to playing his game and then analyzing his game afterwards with an adult, it allows him to communicate at a certain level. And what that does is it accelerates his maturity level. So now all of a sudden, a kid basically is acting older than he would normally act at that age, because that maturity level gets accelerated, and so that's another, I would say, benefit of chess. It helps you mature a lot quicker. So you don't see a lot of kids acting silly, and that kind of thing. They
exactly.
get serious.
And one last thing I would say, Rico, before I turn it back over to Bobby, one last thing I would say is that, and I don't mean to offend anyone by saying this, but I would love to see a chess brain versus a CTE brain. And I'm not trying to offend anybody, but what I'm saying is that these are the things that we need to think about when we put our young people out there and they're banging heads and stuff like that. And look, probably all three of us play football on this podcast right now, and we're not trying to take anything away, but let's look at how active, a young chess player's frontal lobe is, where all the analytical, the last part of the brain that matures. Let's see how active that is versus, looking at, again, without offending anybody, a CTE brain. So, Bobby, thanks for that, man. Turn it back over to you, bro.
Absolutely. Interesting. So, well, before we segue here, and Rico, I want you to stay on. I want to commend you for the concept that you have, the ideas that you have regarding yoga and implementing chess with it. I think you've given a great explanation to those who may not have understood it prior to this program coming out. I think you did a great job of providing some clarification and explanation to those about chess yoga. And I want to make sure that people understand how they can support you. So if you want to please share your information on there. Again, I want you to hang on for the next segment. But if you could please share your information on how we can support you being a nonprofit, please share.
All right. So we have our website. It's www.chessyoga.org. You can always go on the website, learn more about us, make a tax deductible donation to help our cause. And one of the things that we're doing that might kind of be under the radar is by us also being international in nature, providing support overseas. What that does is it strengthens our resolve and our support here in the U.S., interestingly enough, because when we have international ties, that allows for us to create international pressure on the U.S. government. If you look historically at how apartheid ended or any kind of struggle ended, it was because it became international. So when we think about what happened in South Africa, when they were just the ANC just kind of fighting in South Africa, Nelson Mandela and the gang ended up in jail, on Robben Island and all that kind of stuff. But then when it became Free Mandela in England, Free Mandela in the United States, all of that political pressure was put on the South African government to where they were forced to release Mandela, allow him to take part in these free elections that ultimately led to him becoming president of South Africa. Rest is history. Black Panther Party benefited from that international scenario. They were actually, the Vietnamese gave them their international headquarters in North Africa, in Algiers, and allowed them to use that as their international office. So having those international ties is really the key to solving our domestic problems. Because just like Marcus Garvey said, until Africa is redeemed, people of African descent around the world in diaspora will always struggle. So our way to really be treated better in the U.S. is tied to the condition in Africa. And he used the example of China. He said at one time the Chinese were disrespected because China wasn't doing it all that well. Then once China became a well-established power, all of a sudden, people respect the Chinese all over the world. So there is a direct connection. So we have to do a better job at forging these ties with the international community, whether that's people of African descent in England, which I do love going to Africa or anywhere else around the world, because like I said, it's going to strengthen us. That's how European Jews have taken over, basically. They became international. So Jews in France, England, the United States, all of them are all supporting Israel. So it's no surprise that, they get all of this funding from the U.S. government, et cetera, through the lobbying and et cetera, that they've been able to establish in the U.S. through those international ties and the support that they've generated for Israel. So we can do the same.
Outstanding.
Outstanding more than
commentary.
Just helping, kids learn chess. It's political in that way as well.
Outstanding.
Bobby looked like he just did the magical weave.
Yeah.
As someone we know that calls it. He just wove politics and sports in a way that that is putting it where the ghost can get it, and definitely appreciate it. And Rico, this time we usually say goodbye. You've promoted what you're doing. You got a chance to put out what you have going on, but we would normally say goodbye. But Bobby's Civics 101 lesson tonight is redistricting, and brother, you're a man of a lot of hats, and so we're going to ask you to just hold on and let Bobby get ready to talk about redistricting in his Civic 101 lesson tonight, because if people are keeping up with everything, they know that is going on a lot. And why are we keeping you on? Well, because you teach at the collegiate level economics and government, and you also are a resident, which is going to be very important in Bobby's redistricting lesson that he's going to teach tonight. You're also a resident of California and an engaged resident of California. So, Bobby, we're going to hold on to Rico Adkins for a little while, and go ahead, Bobby, and get started with your Civics 101 lesson, brother.
All right. Thank you. So our civics lesson is about redistricting. So I'm going to give you the definition of what redistricting actually is. So what is redistricting? Redistricting is the way we change the districts that determines who represents us. And a big portion of that, of course, the big meaning behind that is in the House of Representatives. Okay. So every member of the U.S. House of Representatives, most of our state legislators, and many of our local legislators in towns and counties are elected from districts. All right. These districts divide states and the people who live there into geographical territories. OK, so most of the time, though, these district lines, they subdivide territories so that there's several districts, like in one city or a state, and representatives for each separate district. All right. But as you can imagine, as the population grows in certain areas, right, is where you have the issue. So some jurisdictions have kept up the pace with the number of representatives assigned to each district, and some have not. So that's where you get into the whole idea about redistricting. And so usually it doesn't happen until there's usually the census. That's where it takes place. We just lost Rico, but hopefully he'll get back on. But that's usually when the redistricting usually occurs. Now, the Supreme Court in the 1960s decided that for population disparity, it violated the Constitution. So it required equal populations for each legislative district, so the boundaries would have to be redrawn periodically. That's the definition of redistricting. That's why it's generally done. So as cities grow and expand, and your congressional House of Representatives, that number would actually grow. And if I'm not mistaken, in Alabama, they tried to redraw some lines that excluded heavily black populated areas, so you could basically, besmirch their vote, so to speak, right? And so what we have now is we have the state of Texas trying to redraw their map so that basically it's all red, right? So when you have someone like a Jasmine Crockett that's speaking out there, a powerful woman such as herself, a firecracker that speaks out there, you want to be able to basically kind of get rid of her, by the next election, where you can not have someone like her with the power that she has, and yes, she is powerful, to be able to speak on the way that she does. So as a counter to this, the state of California and the state of New York have said, hey, don't sleep now. We could do the same thing. All right. So for those that don't know, California and New York hold the most electoral votes when it comes down to election day. So they're basically throwing a warning out there like, all right, you can play this game if you want to, but we can counter back and do the same. So Texas, the Democrats that are in the House of Representatives on the state level, right? They have decided to leave so that they don't have a quorum. So Texas Republicans, they have at least 88 members. There are 88 members that are Republicans, so they dominate the state. However, you have to have 100 present for there to be a quorum. In other words, to be able to take a vote, right? So what the Texas Democrats decided is we're just not going to show up. In fact, we're going to leave the state. We're going to go to Illinois and New York so that they can't vote, right? That's their counter to this, because Texas wants to redraw the maps, as we said before, and gain this advantage. So they're saying like, hey, we just won't show up. Greg Abbott, who is the governor, he's threatened to have them arrested. However, when you're outside of the state of Texas, it's out of jurisdiction. They can't do anything, right? So they have purposely fled. He's even threatened to fine individuals or arrest individuals, who even threaten to pay any of the fines that may be accrued on top of these Democrats who have fled and left office, so to speak. When I say left office, I'm going to use that in parentheses. But to prevent them from doing what they're trying to do. We got all this chaos. So I asked Rico to stay on because he is a resident of California. And I want to just ask him briefly, he doesn't have to give a long, detailed explanation, but being a resident of California and having a governor, Gavin Newsom, that says, hey, we could do this too. Now, I wanted to get his opinion about this, from his perspective.
And Bobby, I want to just jump in here real quick before
Sure.
Rico give what I think is going to be a very informative answer about what California is going to do. But I just want to make sure the viewers and the followers know that don't come on here or don't come in the messages talking about they need to do their job. By they, I mean the state house representatives in Texas. They usually, elected officials, they usually don't do this at the state level unless it is they usually do it and it's the last resort. Okay. They've tried all kinds of things, and they're not getting paid. They're not going to leave their job. I mean, it already is a part-time job anyway, but these people actually have full-time jobs for most of them, and they're getting fined and all this kind of stuff. So it was a last resort. So please, you can save it for some other podcast about, well, they need to do their job, well, whatever. So anyway, last resort. Rico, talk to us, brother.
I want to also
California.
add another threat tool Texas Governor Abbott's hand is to try to have these elected officials removed from office, which will be a long and lengthy process, and it'll probably fail 9 times out of 10.
Yeah,
But
good luck
that's
with that.
supposed to
Yeah.
be a final resort if they can't have any of the other remedies, uh,
Right.
used effectively. So that's another threat on top of that they're trying to impose on these Democrats in the state. In the state of California, like I said, it's a huge state. The cities, metropolitan areas, L.A., the Bay Area, San Diego, are really, huge Democratic, pockets of support. Outside of those areas, once you get all the way up, in the boomies, as we like to say, areas like around outside of Sacramento, etc. Now you might start to run into some conservatives. In San Diego, there's the La Jolla area, which is rich, area. A lot of rich people, some of the richest people in the state live down in that area. So in that particular district, they usually elect Republicans because they are the majority. So Governor Newsom's redistricting plan could potentially impact these areas because remember, La Jolla, San Diego is right near the Mexican border. And there is a huge Latino population in that area. But the way the district lines, I'm sure, are drawn in that little pocket, it probably does give a slight edge to those conservatives in that area. But Governor Newsom could potentially change that and redraw the map to where for every Republican conservative, there's a Latino liberal, and they cancel each other out. So that could potentially hurt, especially if everything is divvied out, as far as representatives. In other words, each district gets that representative to represent the state. It's winner take all. So.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to get your just get your thoughts. Since you're out there and what you're hearing. Being a California resident, y'all pay the most taxes than anyone. It's the most populous state. So California is obviously very powerful in the political spectrum. From that standpoint, they can take a stance if they want to counter things that the federal government they try to do.
California has the fifth largest economy in the world, not in the country.
In the world.
In the
That's
world.
right.
Exactly.
That's
so
right.
most people are under this impression that the Trump administration can kind of stronghold, California into doing certain things by saying, "Oh, we're going to restrict federal funding if you do X, Y, and Z." California can do the same. Governor Newsom can say, "Well, okay, no problem. Since we send you guys probably more money than any other state, we're going to withhold those funds from going to the federal government," and that could cause a shortfall, especially states like Alabama and other states that definitely receive more from the federal government than they give to the federal government. So that's something to also take into consideration.
Well, according to Tommy Tuberville, you got those inner city rats, that are just feeding off the government. That's the state he's trying to run as governor. But he wants to talk about inner city rats when his state, I believe, is number 6 in the country, relying on federal funds. So, what are you talking about? It's just it's absurd.
It reminds me of Tuberville can spell inner
Right.
city, let alone anything else. But Bobby, I did want to ask Rico one thing, and that is, Rico, as far as you know, are there any restrictions to the state constitution of California that Governor Newsom may run into? I know in Texas there are not, as far as changing, the lines and stuff prior to, a census year every 10 years, and we're only at the halfway point being 2025. Right. To your knowledge, does California has any restrictions for Governor Newsom to counter what Texas is doing?
I would say there are any restrictions outside of the normal voting process. In other words, any changes that need to be made, such as redistricting, has to receive a majority vote in order for that to be enacted. And California is very liberal as far as making any kind of changes. Even if you don't like a elected official, you as a citizen of California can basically get a petition, go around, get signatures, and then have that person recalled. If you remember back in the day, you would hear about, Governor fill in the blank is going through a recall election. Other states, they don't have to really worry about that. But California is very liberal as far as what they can do as far as, utilizing tools and remedies to rid themselves either of politicians they don't like or rules that they don't like. So Proposition 209, we could talk about that. That wasn't, in the state constitution or anything. Ward Connolly, I might add an African American conservative, really wrote that piece of legislation and then presented it to the California legislature, and it got the majority vote. And that's how affirmative action failed in the state of California. Like I said, there was nothing officially on the books that said yay or nay in regards to affirmative action. It's simply at the mercy of votes, petitions, things of that nature, where you can have stuff put on the ballot, and people, the people of California will simply just vote yeah or nay, whether that's legalizing, marijuana or, like I said, redistricting, So hope that answers your question.
And let me say here, let me say here, man. First of all, Rico, I want to thank you for coming on, man. Again, I'm proud of you, brother, for the work that you're doing with your nonprofit and what you do outside of that as well. And let me just share this one last thing before we let Rico go. This is all his education coming out. It's so ironic that if you heard me say earlier, we started at West Georgia. I finished at UGA. Rico did the same thing, right? He left a year before I came. So, and then of course he pledged Kappa at UGA, and he saw me my freshman year, when I pledged Kappa at West Georgia. So, we've had, again, this friendship for such a long time. And I'm just going to tell y'all that you hear the intelligence of this brother speaking now, but we laughed so much and cut up so much our freshman year in college, man. I've always thought fondly of that. I've been happy with the choice that I made to go to West Georgia. I'll never regret that. It was a great time, especially when we were there. That was just a great time in life, man. And so I want to thank you, man, for being a friend for as long as you have, and it's going to continue, man. We're going to be friends till we drop, bro.
Exactly.
And I want to thank you.
I was just going to add, you're the only person I know that has that same track record of attending West Georgia and then transferring to UGA. I can't name one other person that followed that same, pattern or plan. You're the only person in my circle of friends that actually went to West Georgia and UGA. So that's a unique bond that we have.
Wow, let's. Yeah, we do, man. So I want to thank you again as we go on to this final segment. Thanks again, brother. We'll talk soon, and God bless you and your family.
All right, thank you,
guys. Rico, thanks, brother,
me.
for staying on a little bit extra for us. We appreciate you. Talk to you soon, brother. Be safe.
Take it easy.
Yes, man. So we had a great time our freshman year,
absolutely,
man.
And what it proves is that don't worry so much about your kids cutting up, in college. They'll be look at Bobby X. Bryan, look at Rico Adkins today. So man, that's what that can turn into.
We had such a great time.
Good stuff.
All right,
Bobby. So we got our hot topic, and
yes.
I know you're going to talk a little bit about Tulsi Gabbard and some of the shenanigans that's going on, and let's get in it.
Okay, so in this final segment, I almost have to laugh at this stuff, man, because it's really comical to me. It's sad, it's pathetic, but it's comical, right? So let's look at the timeline of things as they transpired. You had in May, you had the Attorney General Pam Bondi tell Donald Trump that he's in the Epstein files. They ran on this. They wanted, all of this stuff out here. They promised to be transparent. Oh, we're gonna share the files. Who all is in it? So as soon as he finds out, his name is in it, now you got to create a distraction. Okay, so now you've got his MAGA base angry, mad. As we talked about last month. Oh, all of a sudden now I gave you a list of so much other stuff which should have been a deal breaker. Anything from January 6th to mocking the disabled, to all the sexual assault allegations, to grab them by the pee, on and on and on and on, on and on. But we get to pedophilia, and now they mad, right? So we're not going to diffuse that, because you should be, right? It should be a non-starter, as those other things should have been a non-starter. But here we are now, and soon as the heat gets turned up on, oh, your name is in the files, he was on Epstein's plane 7 times. 7 times from the year 1993 to 1997. 7 times, all right? So if they're together that much, flying to his island and whatnot, I mean, how do you ignore or pretend like those things didn't happen. Okay. So as a result, we create this distraction because the heat is on him. And this is what he does. As soon as, we get to dealing with things directly, he creates a distraction to get you off of that. But people aren't falling for it. However, you get Tulsi Gabbard comes out claiming this Russian conspiracy again. This as she titled it, treasonous conspiracy that she's trying to label on to President Barack Obama. Now, what's interesting about all of that is, again, I gave you the initial timeline, which was May of this year, of Pam Bondi telling Trump he's in the files, right? So then in July, all of a sudden, Tulsi Gabbard comes and says, hey, we got this treasonous conspiracy thing with President Obama from 2017, right? You might as well say 2017. Okay, we've had several D&I directors that were in the Trump administration from the first term. Wouldn't that have been a great time to come up with this stuff all of a sudden? When you're leading coming from the election. And let me ask you this. Nobody was talking about Russian collusion anymore. Nobody was talking about that. The Mueller report has already happened. This was already from years ago. Nobody was talking about this. And all of a sudden, Tulsi Gabbard comes out with this, oh yeah, we got this treasonous conspiracy theory now about President Obama kind of creating this idea that Russia was trying to interfere in the election. No, it wasn't an idea. It was no treasonous, collusion, so to speak, of just trying to create something on Donald Trump. No. The findings that were led in a bipartisan committee, I don't know if people understand that it was Republicans and Democrats that went and researched this. And who was the head of it at the time? Marco Rubio, our current Secretary of State. He was the head of it, and he concluded in the findings, which they simply said Russia did try to interfere in the 2016 election. They tried to interfere in the election. Nobody said any votes were changed. They agreed that no votes were altered, no machines were hacked into, right? But they did favor and try to get Donald Trump elected to office. Donald Trump himself was out there pleading with everyone, hey, Russia, if you got anything on the DNC, go ahead and hack into it. Let us know. Remember, he was praising WikiLeaks and all of that kind of stuff, right? Hillary's emails, all of that stuff, on and on and on, right? So now all of a sudden, because people forget what, so much stuff. They don't realize there's so much stuff that goes on with this man every time he turn around. But people forget, like, we've already concluded what happened in 2016, right? They all agreed, yes, Russia did try to interfere. They didn't say they were successful. They didn't say that somehow that he was an illegitimate president, right? But they did say they did try to interfere. So now we're talking all this stuff about John Brennan and, bringing other people that were involved in the committee into some type of grand jury subpoena or testimony. People have suddenly forgotten that as a president, President Barack Obama is basically shielded from these type of allegations from being brought in to a subpoena. All of a sudden, they've forgotten what the Supreme Court, has declared on presidential duties, so to speak. But all he did was launch an investigation into what happened. That's all. And so now they're trying to create this big nothing burger about this whole issue into being some kind of scandal. It's all just to take you off of Epstein. To see people just get constantly distracted with this guy and the tactics and stuff that he uses all the time. It's all a distraction from Epstein. He doesn't want you to know what he did. Although we're showing money that was tied into Epstein. We got videos galore of him and Epstein being present about things that he said about his own daughters. The whole thing with the beauty contest. It's so much stuff that when you pay attention to it, why wouldn't you think there's a connection there? So I wanted to just basically go over that and just, again, I had to kind of laugh at the attempt, and some of them falling for it, the attempt to once again distract you off of Epstein by creating this fake controversy, this nothing burger, as I keep calling it, about the 2016 election, which again, nobody was talking about. This wasn't a headline. This wasn't something that was brewing. All of a sudden now, after all these other D&I directors have been in that same position, nobody said anything. But now suddenly Tulsi Gabbard discovers this information. This is all part of what his revenge tour, so to speak, was, that we were warned about ahead of time. So I want to get your thoughts on that, Rodney.
Yeah, I think, Bobby, that a lot of that Tulsi Gabbard, along with a whole bunch of other people that Donald Trump appointed, in these political assignments, political positions in the government, I think that they all made blood oaths with this guy, man. And Tulsi is just fulfilling that. It's like, at all costs, I need for you guys at all costs to do whatever you have to do to throw the attention off me when the attention get, when the cameras get hot and all of this kind of stuff. And so just think about the number of people who this guy has destroyed, who had built, a national platform, even what's his face, the mayor, the former mayor there of New York, Giuliani. Giuliani was known as America's mayor and let this guy take him down. But I think part of being in Trump's circle is to be someone that you're going to have to make some kind of blood oath to him. And so Tulsi is doing what she's supposed to be doing, which is that, hey, it's my turn to, try to get the heat off this guy. Bobby, I've talked about, I believe on this platform, I've talked about, on this podcast, I've talked about, the red herring, I've talked about wagging the tail, wagging the dog, and this is all that's happening. This is what's happening. It's a shame that certain people are falling for this, but they just want to fall for this. I think at this point, not a toddler, it'll be hard for a toddler to ignore some of the blatant things that, that this guy has done. But I think, when you're a certain kind of person, you just have an ability to just look away, man, to look away, to act like you don't see it, or to actually maybe even don't see it. But that's what I see, Bobby. I just see, that. And then, even on our platform, man, we know that we have a lot of trolls but they usually hang out in the shadows, they don't say much. But as Trump, I've noticed that as the heat gets on him with this pedophilia and all of this stuff, it's amazing that even on our little small platform that we got, the trolls are coming out to defend. We pretty much shut them down and send them right back in the shadows, but they do creep out. And if we're seeing it here, then it's happening everywhere.
I mean, where are we as a country, man, when you can't just simply tell the truth? And I know, don't get me wrong. Don't think that like this is something new. When I say something new, as far as like things being hidden from us, not being told all the information, that's nothing new. That's been going on, in our government, sadly, for forever. But, in this case, it's just like, man, how long are people just going to be this willingly stupid, to fall for this stuff over and over? It has a lifespan. It can't continue forever. It just simply can't. And if you can't tell the truth about what's happening and deal with it, I'm sorry, man. Being raised, I give credit to my dad, my grandparents, my uncles. I mean, come on, man. You got at some point, you got to be a man and stand up and stand in your stuff, man. 10 toes deep. If you make a mistake, just say you're sorry. Just, at some point, just as a man, like, what are we doing in this country anymore? We're allowing lies to be accepted. We're allowing lies not even be challenged. To the point to where, well, that's my guy, so I can't support it. Listen, man, I was a big fan of Bill Cosby, right? I'm just going to use these light examples like that. Big fan of Bill Cosby, right? I can't defend what he's accused of doing. I can defend the process because a lot of the stuff was sealed testimony. We're not going to make this a Bill Cosby, rant or anything, but I'm just simply saying, it doesn't mean I'm going to forget Fat Albert and how important the Cosby Show was, right? And picture pages when he was doing that kind of stuff. All of those things are positive.
And the impact that Heathcliff Huxtable
Yes.
made on our community.
Absolutely.
Just can't throw that away.
Absolutely.
They don't throw this stuff. They don't throw stuff away.
Nope.
Why we got to throw everybody
Nope.
away?
Nope. They don't. Do they stop listening to Elvis? Okay. With the 16-year-old that was living with him during that time when he was in his 20s. You know what I'm talking about with Priscilla.
They idolize it.
Exactly. So you don't stop listening to his music. So we're just at a point in our society where it's really sad when people just, and it's not everyone, but the loudest ones at times are the ones that are refusing to deal with reality, just dealing with the truth, man, of what someone is. And the saddest part about this time right now is that you should have learned it the first time. You should have learned it from the first time that man was coming down the stairs and started slandering about every race you can think of, especially the Mexican race, Latinos, etc. You should have learned from the first time. But when you get a chance to do it again, it just makes me sit here and I'm not only disgusted by it. And we're both veterans. We've talked about that numerous times. So it's like, man, don't come talk to me about defending America. I don't look, man. I signed up to defend this country against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and to defend the Constitution. That's what we signed up for. It didn't matter what your political affiliation was. That's what you signed up to do, right? Period. It didn't matter, if the person you were defending or fighting with or against was a part of an organization that you didn't like or whatever. It didn't matter. You were all one team. I don't know where we are as a country right now. I know we're not together. I know it, and the saddest part about it, and I'll end my rant here, the saddest part about it is you had to have something like 9/11 happen to bring the country together. Why wait for something like that when you clearly see what's wrong right now? And people are purposely choosing sides that they know in their good conscience is wrong, right? We can defeat this stuff, but you got to come out of this denial of what this man is. And just deal with it, man, and just deal with the reality of it and go from there. But, as long as we continue, as long as people continue, because it's his base. But as long as people continue to make excuses or deny the truth and everything that another news outlet reports, all this fake news, we're in a terrible place that people don't understand how much we are at risk with other countries not liking us. And we've talked about this with Iran and any other any other country or faction or tribe that wants to attack the United States and do whatever. That's what you're opening yourself up to. And we only have ourselves to blame. Lord forbid any of that happen. I don't want that to happen to anyone. But these are the things that you're asking for if you don't stand up and tell the truth.
And I don't even know, Bobby, if we can even, a national tragedy, like you said, like 9/11, right? And I think now, if that same type of tragedy were to happen in the United States, that the empathy and the come togetherness, what you talked about, would be so short-lived that you won't even believe it.
Yeah.
It was short-lived, in my opinion, the first time it happened.
It was.
But it would be much shorter as far as us coming together as a country. And so, but Bobby, while it's fresh on me, before I turn it over you to close it out, is that I just want to make sure that we didn't offend anybody. I think it was a tongue slip, Bobby. I think you said that the Mexicans, and you said race. Well, we know, and I know you know, that Mexico is not a race; it's a country. That's correct. What happens when we keep talking about this made-up construct of race that we did not create. That sometimes it can just slip the tongue. But yes, we do know that Mexico is a nationality.
That's
and
right.
It's not a race. It's a nationality and not a race. So,
and I'm glad you said that, because that's what happens when you're trying to quote someone, who uses that type of language the way he does
because
to describe
they don't know.
people.
We know you know, but they don't know that Puerto Rican is not a race.
No, it's not.
So it's a nationality.
But
anywho, right. But before we turn it over, Bobby, I just want to just reiterate what you said, man, about the people are choosing. I believe at this point, when it comes down to our leader, supposedly leader for this country, is I think that people are just choosing to be ignorant. I think that they know what's happening especially to a certain extent. And I think that they believe that, you know what, it's not going to bother me. It's not going to impact me. And so guess what? As long as those others are losing, then I will be okay. And I just want to do one quote, Bobby, before I turn it back over to you. One quote, one of my best quotes from Dr. King, when he says that the two most dangerous things in this world, sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. That's what's going on. I believe that Dr. King, if he was here today, that is exactly what he will repeat on a loop. So, Bobby, appreciate it, man. Close it out, Bobby.
Thank you, brother. And again, just to jump back to what you said too. Yes, I was not intending to defend anyone from the country of Mexico. Love the country, love to visit, and I'm sure the people of Mexico, I hope they understand that I love them as well as anyone else who comes here in this country. Should not be labeled and slandered the way that this person in office, who I will not give the respect of the title, could continue to do. And did it the first time and continues to do today. So to close it out today, I want to say one thing as well. My opinions, and I'm sure, Rodney, you feel the same way. My opinions are my own.
That's right.
They do not represent my fraternity. I do not speak for my fraternity. I speak for me. So I want to make sure anybody understands that on any of these episodes. I do not speak on behalf of my fraternity. I speak on behalf of myself. But I am a proud brother of my fraternity, and I know you feel the same about yours as well.
Absolutely.
So to close it out, again, catch Local Lookout with Rodney and Bobby every first Thursday of the month at 7 p.m. We are grateful and thankful for everyone that listens. Hopefully we provided something educational for you today. Again, I want to thank my special guest, Rico Adkins, and Chess Yoga. Again, support that organization. That brother has done amazing work. So until then, till the next time, we'll see you. Be on the lookout.
Hey, family. If you like what you saw, visit our website at blackmansroundtable.com for more information or to check out more content. Until next time, we'll see you in them suites and them streets. Peace.